Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just Scare Us Already. I'm your host, Cheyenne, with my co host, Dave.
Hi, everyone.
And this is a podcast where we talk about old and new horror movies. We discuss them as well as we just tell our general opinion. If it sounds like something that you would like, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Now that we are in Halloween, if you have not been following our Instagram, go ahead and give it a follow down below. We will be posting different horror movie suggestions every day for the month of October. But for now, let's get into what we're talking about today, which is horror comedies.
Yeah, so although our podcast is called Just Scare Us Already, we must admit that not all horror films need to be scary. Sometimes, instead of just the intense, nail biting horror, we need a laugh or two while the blood continues to splatter across the screen. As we wrap up for the Halloween season, we decided to take a look at some of our favorite horror comedies. Not only were some of these films successful as horror films, but some were just downright hilarious. So join us as we discuss our top five horror comedies. So, Shy, let's begin with you. What's your number
Sure.
five?
So my number five, admittedly, this movie took me a few watches to really actually appreciate. I had to really pay attention to grasp the story as it came off a bit slow and weird at first. But the movie Creep. It was on Netflix a while ago, but the story follows a videographer who answers an advert of the website Craigslist for a one-day job in a remote mountain town to video the last messages of a dying man. The job takes a strange turn when the last messages get darker and darker. The videographer continues to see the job through, but when it's time to leave, he is unable to find his keys, and when he receives a strange phone call, he finds his client is not all what he initially seemed to be. So the comedy in this movie, and this is why it listed number five for me, is because it's the awkward kind of comedy. It's putting someone in a really weird situation that you kind of have to giggle at and kind of chuckle at just to kind of get through.
Hmm.
So it isn't an outright laugh out loud style of jokes or scenes that are similar to the ones later on in my list. But this one is much more psychological and focuses on Mark Duplass's character Joseph, putting Patrick Bryce's Aaron in extremely awkward situations or making him film things that would make any sane person quickly want to leave the area. That was the one frustration I had with this movie, was the whole time you just kind of sit there, and it's kind of like uh don't speak no speak no
Okay.
evil, sorry, speak no evil, where you're just kind
Hmm.
of like, why would you continue to put yourself through this? But yeah, so this one, it kind of falls into that territory, including a scene where he simulates the first bath with his unborn child, so you can imagine the awkwardness of filming that. But all of this slowly builds to Joseph pushing Aaron further and further out of his comfort zone until Aaron finally stands up for himself. I really enjoyed this movie despite or possibly because it is not the normal horror comedy. I'm not really someone who typically seeks out comedies in general. It's not really my style. So this movie is an easy way to kind of get in the few awkward laughs while mostly focusing on the creepy and the horror aspects of the movie.
Hmm.
So as a horror movie, really good, really, really good. I would suggest this as a psychological horror. As a comedy, it's not what most people would seek out for a comedy. So that's my number five. I would say though, if I didn't put this one because it is listed on IMDb as not a comedy, but it is listed as a comedy on Rotten Tomatoes. So if
Hmm.
I did not count this, my number five would actually be the same as your number five, which you can go ahead and discuss.
All right. Yeah, and I agree. I've only seen Creep once, and I did think it was rather slow.
Yeah.
Didn't think it was hilarious or anything like that. And you're absolutely right. It does kind of play like Speak No Evil, where sometimes when you're a little too accommodating, it could come back to bite you. But I will say, putting this list together, I was surprised at the number of horror comedies I've actually seen. I mean,
Me too.
it just kind of, I guess, when you're a horror film buff, you just tend to watch just about anything and everything. But I actually could have come up with probably a top 20,
Oh
because
yeah,
there's
it was
so
very
many
hard to
that,
narrow it down.
yeah, that I actually liked, and felt like, oh, should I exclude them for someone
Yeah,
else? So yeah, it was definitely tough. But my
I will
number
say,
five, go ahead.
before you go into your number five, I will say real quick. I did get a sneak peek at Dave's number five or Dave's top 5 list, and so I did change mine to not have all the same as yours because it was very similar.
Okay.
Just so that we could expand more comedies because I agree with you. There's so many good ones out there, and my list would
Mhm.
have looked like 10, and a lot of them similar with yours. So that's
Yeah,
my top
yeah.
5 out of the ones I took out because of Dave.
Well, I think having, you and I have watched so many horror movies together, that I think that's
Hmm.
probably why our lists are very similar, because we pretty much have similar taste in,
Yeah.
horror movies, and so that's probably why. But my number five is, and I know sometimes I laugh about this one because I never would have imagined I would have liked this
Yeah.
movie. But it's Anna and the Apocalypse from 2018. I mean, this movie covers Halloween and Christmas all wrapped up in a musical, and that sounds strange but true. So the film is basically about a zombie apocalypse threatening the sleepy town of Little Haven at Christmas, forcing Anna and her friends to fight, slash, and sing their way to survival, facing the undead in a desperate race to reach their loved ones. But they soon discover that no one is safe in this new world, and with civilization basically falling apart around them, the only people they can really rely on is each other. Uh, so Anna and the Apocalypse actually had a very limited release in theaters, and I believe it found its audience on streaming during the COVID-19 years. I
Mm.
enjoyed the music, and uh, thought, although the comedy wasn't like knee slapping funny, the film had enough lighthearted jabs to make it a funny zombie horror film. The music is catchy. I definitely found myself humming some of the tunes after the film. I even downloaded the soundtrack on Spotify. So I definitely enjoyed the music, and I just thought it was a very good, lighthearted film that, I think during COVID, it was needed, because there were just, you couldn't go to theaters or anything, and a
Mhm.
lot of the streaming stuff out there was, old movies that you've seen, a dozen times. So it was definitely a nice change of pace. So that's my number
Yeah,
five.
I completely agree. It was so good. I really love that movie. I watch it every Christmas season. Um, so I will say definitely check it out if you get a chance. It really did make me want to do an episode on horror movie musicals. So leave
Okay.
a comment down below on whether or not you would like to see that. I didn't realize there were so many, but there's a lot, and I really do
Really?
like a good chunk of them. Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, like Sweeney Todd, technically Corpse
Hmm.
Bride, and an Apocalypse, Repo, which I personally do like, Devil's
Okay.
Carnival, which is one of my favorite movies, um, in a really bad good way. But anyways, Little Shop of Horrors,
Okay.
anyways, kind of similar to Anna and the Apocalypse, my number 4 is also a Christmas movie. I realized I really like Christmas horror movies when they're comedies, but my
Right.
number 4 is Krampus. If you're looking for a great horror movie for Christmas time that will both scare the young ones and make everyone laugh, I think Krampus is such a good movie for that. It's a great intro into the horror genre for younger audiences because it's not super scary, but it's also not crudely funny. But the story follows a young boy with a traditional German grandmother who is warned to always cherish his family on Christmas. When he fails to do so, he accidentally summons the European festive demon Krampus to his home. This movie is so good in so many ways, yet I will admit it's a bit cheesy at times, especially the ending. However, I thought that it kind of played into the idea of how Christmas movies typically are. They typically, you make a mistake, you realize how much you love your family, you make amends for it. So it was following into that line of movies while still doing the horror stuff for Halloween. As the David Cockner, Tony Collette, Adam Scott, and Allison Tolman are very funny in the movie. I think they really carry it, but as the adults, that's somewhat expected. They are given some of the funnier lines as well as better actions, but the children actors honestly do hold their own. Michael Dougherty's directing and editing of this film was really well done. Despite it being a Christmas movie, it's not too dark in a sense of lighting, so you really get to see the fantastic creature designs, including when they finally show Krampus. It is such a good design. I still think about it when I think of Krampus, and I really love the look of him. This is one of my favorite movies to watch during Christmas time. This only made fourth place because it's a little too silly at times, especially with David Cockner. Uh, he's a comedy man, so he really does lean into the comedy aspect more than the horror aspect. But
Hmm.
overall, I thought this is such a cute and fun movie.
Yeah,
So that's my number four.
I actually like Krampus a lot. Again, that was another one that surprised me that I liked it. And the ending was shocking. I mean,
I
I
love
don't want to I don't want to
it.
spoil anything, but definitely watch it through to
Yeah.
the end because it's a very good ending. Okay, so my number four is 2020's Freaky. Here we have a film that
Mm.
takes the premise of Freaky Friday and turns it into a very funny slasher film. So the story is about 17-year-old Miley Kessler, who spends her days trying to survive high school and the cruel actions of the popular crowd. But when she becomes the latest target of the Butcher, the town's infamous serial killer, her senior year becomes the least of her worries when the butcher's mystical dagger causes him and Millie to magically switch bodies. The frightened teen learns she has just 24 hours to get her identity back before she looks like a middle aged maniac forever. So when I saw the trailer for Freaky, I actually rolled my eyes and thought it was a dumb concept. But after watching the film, I was hooked. Vince Vaughn is hilarious as a serial killer turned teenage girl. The film had enough action and kills to make it a successful horror film, and the pace kept me entertained throughout. I just thought that the concept of serial killer being trapped in the body of a teenage girl, it was like, hey, he had a new lease on life. Now he was a teenage girl and he could go around and kill as many people as he wanted to. And then for the serial killer to be, the girl to be trapped in a serial killer's body, it's like that
Hmm.
was just hilarious. I mean, I know it's been done before, like uh I can't think of the name of the movie now. It was a Rob Schneider film where
Hot
he,
chick.
yeah, Hot Chicks, okay, where he gets trapped in or in a girl's body, and the girl's in his body, and the
Hmm.
usual jokes. Oh, look, I have a you know what, and those kind of things. But it still worked. It's for me, it still worked. It was very entertaining. I actually watch
Yeah.
this movie every Halloween.
And there is something about a grown man playing this sexy teen girl in an old guy's body. I mean, it was the same thing with Jumanji. Jack Black's character was my favorite in that movie just because
Mhm.
of the way he would sway his hips in Jack Black's body. And
Right.
Vince Vaughn did so good in this. I didn't think I would like it either because I'm not a huge Vince Vaughn fan typically,
Hmm.
but he was, like you said, a standout. He was so good in in that movie. It's such a good movie. But my
Right.
number three
Okay.
is Abigail.
All right.
I love Abigail. I'm sorry, but would you be willing to kidnap a little girl for an easy payout? Would you still be willing to do it if you knew she was a vampire looking for her own easy meal? After a group of criminals kidnap the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, they retreat to an isolated mansion, unaware that they're locked inside with no normal little girl. I really enjoyed this movie. I know a lot of people weren't huge fans of it when it came out, and it's I think it's at like a 6.6% or 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb. However, I think it's super clever and a and funny. I love a good horror or vampire movie, and I love the idea of a little girl vampire. And then you throw in a ballerina dancing around chasing these professional thieves and killers. I think it really sold it for me. There's something really funny about seeing her just twirling and jumping, and then having this absolutely messed up face. I I enjoyed learning why all the thieves were chosen. I think that they did a good job of slowly revealing the truth behind everything. Sometimes with
Mhm.
dark comedies, they kind of just throw it all out there in like a kind of sloppy exposition just to get back to the jokes and the scares. But I felt
Mhm.
like this one really stuck to the heart of the storyline and was relying more on the concept of how it was funny and a few of the characters. I think that Dan Stevens plays an amazing psycho in this movie, and Alicia Ware did a tremendous job as the titular Abigail. This is a great movie to add to your watch list for this upcoming season. Like Krampus, I think that it's good intro into horror. It's not too scary for people who don't typically like horror movies, and the gore, although a bit extreme at times, kind of reminiscent of Cabin in the Woods or even the recent Substance ending with a lot of blood. It's mostly just blood and a really great effects to the whole thing. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
That's
I
my number
enjoy
three.
I enjoyed Abigail as well. I did find the most of the film was cliche.
Yeah.
You know, a band of criminals, each one with a secret past that gets revealed, and you know, so yeah, it was cliche, but it was entertaining. I agree. To see a little girl ballerina around, and you know, all of a sudden she's this vicious little monster. It worked as a comedy, as well as a horror film. I did enjoy Abigail as well.
So what is your number three? What's your middle of the road for top five?
All right, so number three, I actually have 2019's Ready or Not. So, Ready or Not punctuates the old saying, beware the family you are marrying into. So the film is about Grace, who couldn't be happier after she marries the man of her dreams at his family's luxurious estate. But there's just one catch: she must now hide and stay hidden from midnight till dawn, while her new in-laws hunt her down with guns, crossbows, and weapons. As Grace desperately tries to survive the night, she soon finds a way to turn the tables on her not so lovable relatives. I really enjoyed Ready or Not, although the film can be quite bloody at times. The pace and the intensity of the film is well done, while keeping the humor just on the surface to avoid making it too comical. I truly
Mhm.
believe the lead actress, Samara Weaving, who plays the role of Grace, I think she loves to be hunted or hunting and covered in blood. It was very similar to her roles in the recent 2024 film Azrael, 2019's Guns Akimbo, and 2017's Mayhem, where it's just blood and blood and blood, and she's either chasing somebody or she's being chased. So it must be in her contract. But overall, Ready or Not, it works as a very good uh, turn the tables kind of film where the hunted becomes the hunter. You know, it reminds me of Your Next.
Mhm.
So yeah, very entertaining. The comedy, again, it's not slapstick or anything like that. It's humorous jabs and uh, comical statements. So it's not, you know, something silly where, you know, you got people walking into walls or falling out of chairs or anything like that. It's not silly like that. So definitely an enjoyable movie. So
That is
what's
a
your
good
number
spot.
two?
Okay, my number two is another Christmas movie. Better Watch
Okay.
Out.
All right.
All children are innocent, right? What about the rich boy who doesn't seem to have any sense of, of consequences? Sadly, this is a little bit close to home nowadays with what I've been seeing on Instagram and TikTok with some kids So just beware when you're babysitting. For on a quiet suburban street, a babysitter must defend a 12-year-old boy from intruders, only to discover it's far from a normal home invasion. So, despite the young cast, they all did a really phenomenal job in this movie. Olivia DeJonge and Ed Oxenbould are reunited from The Visit, in my opinion, doing a much better job in this movie, along with Levi Miller, who all do such a phenomenal job, honestly. Oxenbold's Garrett is the perfect second-hand man or assistant who is clearly reluctant to allow things to go as far as it does, but also too timid and weak to stop things before it's too late. DeJong's Ashley is the great final girl. I think that she should really do more horror as she gets older. She does a super great job in this movie of always seeming very believable in every scene. And lastly, Miller's Luke is the quintessential psycho child who has not been taught that his actions come with actual consequences. This movie is a wild ride. The beginning does a great job of keeping the audience just as in the dark as Ashley is. I remember when I first saw this, I thought it was going to be kind of like the synopsis says, a typical home intruder movie, very much three kids having to survive the night. And boy, does it take a turn. And early enough on that you're not bored, but late enough that you really do kind of fall into the storyline of this intruder and are ready to sit through a whole movie of this, only to be completely turned on your head. It's so good. I will, when everything is revealed, that's when really the dark comedy of the whole thing starts. This little kid who was about 14 when he filmed the movie, um, there's the funniness of him being a 14-year-old and really trying to seem macho, but is clearly a babied boy his entire life. It is a good Christmas movie. It is mature at times, so I wouldn't say it's really family friendly just because it does talk about like drugs, alcohol, a bit of sexual comments here and there, but it's definitely a good teen tween horror comedy. So I really enjoyed this one. I think it's a good watch. Oddly, though, all the actors are Australian playing Americans. I don't know
Really?
why that. Yeah, all three kids are Australian actors.
Did not
So
know that.
yeah, I mean, that's why I was looking up their names and ages. So that's
Hmm.
just an odd thing. But it was kind of good to see Olivia DeJonge and Ed Oxenbould because I really disliked them in The Visit.
Hmm.
So to see them in a much better movie playing much better roles was nice because if not, I would have really discounted them for their acting career in horror. But what is your number two?
Good
Or what did you
choice.
think
Good
of Better
choice.
Watch Out? Because I know you saw that one as
Yeah,
well.
I like that movie a lot too. I definitely enjoyed it. It was one that I came across and decided to watch it and actually enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, definitely a good pick. All right, so
So what's gonna be yours?
my number two is 1985's Fright Night. So I'm gonna go a little old school here.
Ooh.
So do we really know who our neighbors are, and should we really spy on them? You may regret what you find out. So the story's about a teenager named Charlie Brewster. As he's a horror film junkie, so it's no surprise that when a reclusive new neighbor moves next door, Brewster becomes convinced he's a vampire. It's also no surprise when nobody believes him, of course. After strange events begin to occur, Charlie has no choice but to turn to the only person who could possibly help him, and that's the washed up television vampire killer, Peter Vincent. So, unlike the 2011 remake of Fright Night starring Colin Farrell, which is also considered a horror comedy, I did not find the remake nearly as funny or entertaining. When I
Hmm.
first saw Fright Night as a teen in 1985, the film felt more scary than funny. I think a lot of the humor was subtle enough that I really didn't get it. I recall seeing this film three or four times during the opening weekend because I liked it so
Oh.
much. As I got older, the humor became more evident, while the scares became less, and the special effects took a more cheesier view. But the film still works as a classic vampire horror film and definitely works as a parody of the old B-rated Dracula films that appear on shows like Spenguli or Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So yeah, definitely Fright Night. I enjoy this movie every time I watch it. Again, the special effects for 1985, they were decent. Now when you look at them, they're kind of laughable, but it's still a very good movie. It still has enough intensity and comic relief where it just works so well as a good horror comedy film.
I think I'm gonna have to rewatch it. I don't think I've seen it in a very long time. I do
Yeah.
remember I liked it, but I think I'm gonna have to rewatch it to get the comedy aspect of it as well.
Oh yeah.
So that's a good choice.
It's
It's a good one.
definitely on my films to watch during Halloween season.
Well, my number one, it won't be too long because it is the same as your number three. But
Okay.
Ready or Not is my number one. I thought
Okay.
that this movie was basically perfection, honestly. This was a 10 out of 10 for me, which I don't give lightly. So if we were doing this on Just Scare Us Already, although it's not super scary, I would give it a thumbs up or even a golden cat. Like this movie is so
Wow.
good.
Wow.
Samara Weaving is absolute perfection in this movie. I was very late to the party seeing this. I did not watch it when it came out in theaters. I missed it. And then I didn't really bother to watch it on streaming. It takes a lot for me to watch something on streaming. However, I'm so happy I saw this movie for this podcast episode. I thought that there was very little wrong with it. The comedy is so good. It's very much eat the rich and awful people style of jokes, which I love. I love when people play just horrifically annoying characters and just bad characters, but the jokes are very aware of that
Hmm.
and are very clearly trying to make a statement about the rich and how the rich stay rich. So it was obviously, like you said, a lot like Your Next, which is another movie I adore. However, in this movie, unlike Your Next main character, Grace is not raised with survivalist skills. So she's very much sloppy and at times very frustrating as she's trying to genuinely survive the scenario. And I like that a lot more. I love movies where you can really feel like this character is doing things that I would find myself doing as well.
Hmm.
Although, granted, I would make sure someone's dead before I run away from them, but that's just because I've seen a lot of scary movies. I know better than to hit them once and run away. I think that Henry Thurney, I believe is how you pronounce his name, really carries the movie in terms of the rich family. His acting is so good. He plays an amazing villain, as well as the perfect rich white guy. The only note I have that would have made this movie better would have been to see some flashbacks of the other in-laws when they played their games. I'm not sure if I missed something, if all the games are horrific or if it's just this one because this one involves a ritual.
Hmm.
So I may have just missed that, but if the games did have their own twist to them, it would have been nice to see them at least in like a quick little flashback. But that's literally my only note. I thought that the movie in general was really good. The ending shocked me twice because I thought we were gonna get a really sad ending when you're following this character, which I like, but not all the time. And then we get something completely different that becomes very much like Abigail. I don't want to give any twists, but or any spoilers, but kind of like Abigail, where it kind of gets very comedic and it gets a little outlandish. But I thought so worth it still. Ready or Not, it's going to be on my list now forever to watch every Halloween. It's such a good movie. So you can say I really, really enjoyed it. I will say I do want to give a shout out to a few horror comedies that I did not put on my list, but I rewatched Cabin in the Woods. I know you
Okay.
hate that movie, but rewatching it as a dark comedy because I went into it thinking it was a horror movie when we first watched it. Watching it in the new light, I do enjoy it. It's very referential on itself. I love the homages to old horror movies. So,
Hmm.
Cabin in the Woods, I would have put on my list. It just didn't make it this time because I wanted to highlight some ones that a lot of people may have not seen. Uh, but yes, go see Ready or Not, please. It's really, really good. Okay, and what is your absolute favorite horror comedy?
All
of all
right.
time.
So my number one, and again, maybe a little old school, but it would be 2004's Shaun of the Dead. Um,
So
so, do
perfect.
you really know what you would do if a zombie infestation suddenly broke out? Do you have a plan A, or worse, a plan B, C, or D? When faced with this type of reality, you can't afford to be oblivious. So, Shaun of the Dead is about a character named Sean who is a 30 something loser with a dull, easy existence. When he's not working at the electronics store, he lives with his best friend Ed in a small flat on the outskirts of London. The only unpredictable element in his life is his girlfriend, Liz, who wishes desperately for Sean to grow up and be a man. So when the town is overrun with zombies, Sean must raise to the occasion and protect Liz and his mother. I truly enjoy Shaun of the Dead. I watch it. Sometimes I even watch it even when it's not Halloween season. It's just a good movie. It's a good comedy. It's a good zombie film. It works so well as a zombie horror film. The acting, is great. All the characters I enjoy. Director Edgar Wright has a creative way of directing that keeps the film sharp and well paced. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost as the lead characters, Sean and Ed, have a great, buddy comedy chemistry that was apparent in Shaun of the Dead and carried over into films like 2007's Hot Fuzz, 2011's Paul, and 2013's The World's End. Again, just one of those films that even if I come across it on regular television, I'll sit there and watch it because it's just one of those films that stands the test of time. I mean, it's been 20 years
Absolutely.
now, and they re-released it in theaters just recently. I didn't see it in theaters, but yeah, definitely enjoyed that film. So
That's a
that's my number
phenomenal
one.
choice. I think it's such a good one. It definitely leans more into the comedy aspect than the horror, but I
Hmm.
think it is such a good movie. Awesome choice. I think all your top fives are great choices.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
too. You too.
three, no, probably four of them I would have put on my list if I did not want to make them the exact same.
Right. Yeah,
It
and
would have been definitely similar.
yeah, I think besides not Abigail, besides Creep, I believe
Hmm.
most of yours were in my top 10.
Perfect. Well, that was our top five each for dark comedies.
We know not all moviegoers will agree with our top five, and that's rightfully so. Not everyone has the same taste and what they find funny. Some folks like dark comedies, while others like slapstick comedies. One thing I think we can all agree on is that not all horror movies need to be serious and scary. Sometimes we need a break from the dread and have a good laugh while still enjoying our favorite genre. The laughs are fun, but we will we still have high hopes that there will be a film soon that will finally just scare us already.
And maybe scare us and make us laugh. Who knows? It could do
Yeah,
both.
yeah,
So I
could
would say
be
go
both.
ahead and leave a comment. Go ahead and put in the comments down below whether or not you do agree with our list or what you would add. Give us suggestions for some scary comedies that we may have missed on our list and may even have missed on our watch. There's so many out there. There was no way I could have gone through all of them. There are a ton I have not seen yet.
Hmm.
So please let us know about down below some more, as well as what you want to see us talk about next. I don't know if any good horror movies are coming out after we post this one, so it may be a double feature or it may be our top five slasher flicks. So we shall see. Make sure you catch us next week for our next episode of Just Scare Us Already. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And like we said, just subscribe, follow, and give us a like.
Thank you.